It's been an incredibly difficult and tragic 38 hours. The weight of Constables Travis Jordan and Brett Ryan's deaths still hasn't completely sunk in, nor will it ever truly sink in. Before I provide you an update on the investigation, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the unfathomable loss facing the families of Constables Jordan and Ryan. Their grief is our grief. We ask that you continue to hold them in your thoughts and respect their space. They are EPS family, and we are working to support them through what have undoubtedly been some of their most heartbreaking days. I'd also like to thank you, the media and the public, for being patient with us as we navigate this loss. The outpouring of support has not gone unnoticed. Across the city, the country, across the whole world, you give us strength. Though, as Chief McPhee emphasized yesterday, there is no further risk to the community, we understand that yesterday's events have deep and far-reaching effects on the citizens of Edmonton. We are still very much in the early stages of our investigation, but here's what I can share with you now. At approximately 12:26 a.m. on Thursday, March 16th, Constable Travis Jordan and Constable Brett Ryan responded to a family dispute call on an apartment complex near 114 Avenue and 132 Street. When the two officers arrived, they were met by a 55-year-old female complainant outside of the building. The two officers then responded to the suite where she lived, along with her 73-year-old male partner and their 16-year-old son. Immediately upon arriving outside the suite, both constables were shot multiple times by the 16-year-old male and were immediately incapacitated. A struggle reportedly ensued between the mother and son over the firearm, and the mother was shot. The suspect then turned the firearm on himself, taking his own life. The father from the residence was not physically injured during the shootings. It has since been confirmed that neither officer discharged their firearm, and it is apparent that they had no opportunity to respond to the threat that faced them. There was no prior information or knowledge about the existence of a gun, and details surrounding that firearm are being investigated. Following 911 calls by multiple reporters, additional police and EMS arrived. One of the injured officers was transported in a police vehicle to hospital, while the other injured officer was taken by ambulance. The female complainant was also taken by ambulance to hospital, where she remains in serious but stable condition. Soon after arriving at the hospital, both officers were declared deceased. As the 16-year-old suspect died in the presence of police, the Director of Law Enforcement was notified and directed that Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, ASIRT, provide oversight to the investigation being conducted by the EPS Homicide Section. We welcome this role from ASIRT, and we will continue to do everything we can to ensure a quality and transparent investigation is completed. Autopsies for both officers will be conducted. The autopsy for the youth suspect is scheduled for Wednesday next week. In times like these, putting on the uniform is no easy task. The reminders of Constables Jordan and Ryan are everywhere, but our members have an unwavering sense of duty and dedication to Edmontonians and the safety of our city. They mourn, but they serve without hesitation. In their every action, they honor the unthinkable sacrifice that's been made. To all those involved in yesterday's events, from the paramedics to hospital staff and countless other agencies and first responders who have provided support, thank you. We are incredibly grateful for all you have done. Once again, we'll do our best to keep everyone updated as the investigation progresses. Information on the public portion of funeral arrangements will be released as soon as it is available. Thank you, and we'll now take your questions. But please understand that given the early stages of this investigation, we may be limited to the details that we may be able to provide.
Hi, my name is Ritika. I'm a reporter with the Canadian Press. Was the 16-year-old wanted in any other incident?
Lots of details certainly surrounding the 16-year-old suspect are being conducted right now. As far as we know, he was not wanted, or there was no warrants outstanding for him.
Hi, Johnny Wakefield with the Edmonton Journal. This is obviously made very complicated by the fact that the accused or the suspect in this case is a youth. Is EPS going to be identifying him at any point? And are there any sort of considerations that you have to make there given the fact that he was not an adult?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of considerations into, whether or not, his name is eventually released. It is possible, but to be fair to the investigation, the autopsy isn't even until next week. This is only a 38-hour-old investigation, and so there's a lot of details and things that have to be discussed before that decision can be made.
And can I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
There's obviously been some speculation, discussion about this shooting that happened, I believe, 4 days prior at the Pizza Hut across the street. Are you able to, is there any connection between these two incidents at this stage that you can comment on?
Yeah, I can comment, certainly geographical location, the way those offenses were committed, the fact that a firearm is used in both instances, certainly we're live to that. It's certainly being investigated, but unfortunately we still don't know. As soon as we can make any determination, confirmation or not, we will definitely release that.
And feel free for a question and a follow-up.
Arthur Green, Western Standard. Just wondering about the firearm. Can you tell us a little bit more about the firearm, if it was a handgun or if it was a long gun? And how does a 16-year-old obtain a firearm illegally in this city?
All very important questions. I mean, certainly, there's just way too many guns in our city right now. It is under investigation, so we cannot prepare to release any information. And as well, we have to release or investigate the tracings of that firearm and whether or not it's related to any other offenses.
Can you also tell us if he was known to police and if he has any prior records?
Yeah, police. He was known to police, but he was never charged with an offense, is my understanding. Okay.
Can you tell me what offense that was?
Sure. The youth did not have a criminal record. The dealings that he did have with police in the past were all non-criminal in nature.
Naramanisa with CTV Edmonton. I'm just wondering, so you mentioned that there is no criminal aspect with this teen. Was he somehow part of the system? Was he like in child services or anything that you can give us that anywhere on your radar? Or maybe a government, organization, would that be?
We're very early into this, and these are all things that we want to find answers to. We just don't have those answers yet for you as far as, his personal past or his involvement in any systems. We don't have that information yet.
And can we ask, I don't know if this would be released or not, but you say that they didn't have a chance, possibly they were at the door. Do we know if they were in the apartment or were they at the door? Would you be able to comment on that?
Yeah, I can comment. It was outside of the door of the apartment.
And they made themselves known that they were police, and then that happened.
Unfortunately, I don't think anybody can answer that question, but certainly they were there, ready to respond to that domestic call, and they never made it inside the apartment.
Sarah Reed, Global News. Just wondering, you mentioned that the teen had multiple interactions with police that were non-criminal. Are you able to confirm whether or not there was mental health calls previously made to this home and how recently they were?
I can't speak to the timing of responses to that address or involving that youth. Again, they were non-criminal in nature. One of the incidents was categorized as a mental health complaint, but I don't have any further details as to what that was made up of.
So police had previously attended to this address?
Yes.
Okay. And then just as my follow-up, do we have any information yet as to, I know you mentioned that police were not aware that there was a gun in the home. Do we have any information as to who that gun belonged to, if it was registered to either of the parents?
It takes a little bit longer to be able to find the tracings of that firearm and history of that firearm, so it's being investigated right now.
Hi there, Julia Wong, CBC National. Any sense what precipitated the family dispute?
I do not.
And is there a sense the motivation for these officers being shot, was this meant to be an ambush? Was there any particular ideology behind this teen?
It's not being investigated as any type of ideologically motivated offense at this time, so there's nothing to indicate that. But certainly it is consistent with what is an ambush.
Hi, Tricia Kindleman, CBC Edmonton. Just curious if you can speak to this sort of capping off a string of violent incidents in the city. According to some of our data, it's been 8 deaths in about 12 days, or 8 violent incidents, rather, I should say. So just wondering if you can sort of speak to that unfortunate trend potentially, and if there's anything that you've noticed on the front lines, and just what Edmontonians can sort of expect to see from this.
I can certainly just comment that absolutely we're seeing an uptick in violent crime. We certainly have been seeing an uptick in crimes involving guns for a while, and so we're absolutely putting all of our resources and analysts and doing what we can to get ahead of what that is. There's a variety of reasons obviously behind the gun crime, and to be able to relate them all, we can't, and so we can't necessarily say there's just any one thing that's precipitating that.
Can you speak to any other circumstances that you might be investigating regarding gun crimes in that string of events that could also be connected with this incident, potentially?
At this point, we don't have anything, directly to that individual that was known previously, and nothing specifically to that area for gun crime.
Audrey Neveu, French CBC. Can you speak a little further on the condition of the woman who is in the hospital, the mother?
Yeah, other than serious, but stable.
Okay, and what type of gun was used in this incident?
We're not able to tell you at this point. Still under investigation.
Okay, because you don't know, or that's undisclosable?
It may hurt other investigations if this firearm was used in other investigations.
Okay, thank you.
Darcy Robchan, City News Edmonton. With respect to what you can say about the investigation, we spoke to people who lived in the apartment complex who said they saw police carrying what looked like a person. Are you able to say where they were coming and going to?
Just in the comments that I said, so police officers did take one of their members to the hospital. There was an ambulance that took a member to a hospital, and an ambulance took the female complainant to the hospital.
Kieran Levitt, Toronto Star. I'm just wondering if during the first investigation after the Pizza Hut shooting, did the teenager come up on police radar at all during that canvassing?
I don't have any knowledge to say that person came up at all regarding any of those crimes in that area.
In light of what occurred this week, are police treating those 2 investigations as one of the part of the same investigation now, or are they
No,
tied
they're
together?
2 separate investigations.
Ritika Dubey with the Canadian Press. So what was the reason the mother called the police?
We don't know exactly, other than that she obviously wanted police assistance for some difficulty she was having with her son.
Did she know that the boy had a gun?
No information was communicated to our members, and we didn't have any previous information about a gun in that residence.
And is she cooperating with the investigation?
She is unresponsive at this point, and as soon as that changes, that's definitely somebody we want to talk to.
Thank you. Sorry, what about the father?
The father is cooperating with the investigation.
Okay, thank you.
Jenny Wakefield again. Just one follow-up just regarding the Pizza Hut aspect. Do you know if any investigators were in that housing complex following that, doing door-to-door checks following that earlier shooting Sunday? Were they in the Baytree Park?
I don't have specific information as to the steps taken in that Pizza Hut investigation, so I can't comment on that.
And just unrelated, were the officers, the constables, were they wearing body armor? I don't know if patrol members wear body armor.
They all wear body armor, and they were wearing body armor.
They were, okay, thank you.
Sarah Reed, Global News. We understand that there's a rise of family violence and domestic violence calls sort of in Alberta, and they become very unpredictable and very hostile, unfortunately, very quickly. Is EPS looking at any sort of changes potentially to training or the way that they handle calls, maybe send somebody else with officers, more information from the complainant, like anything that could, I don't want to say prevent this in the future, because obviously it was very unpredictable, but could maybe help
Yeah, I mean,
officers responding?
I mean, it's certainly known across, law enforcement all across the country. Responding to domestic violence and family fights are one of the most dangerous responses that our police members do. Unfortunately, I just know, like in Edmonton, it turns into the several thousands of calls that we do respond to. And just because there's so many variables and dynamics that occur in that situation, you just never know. But we absolutely work well with many partners, a lot of non-governmental organizations, social workers, lots of domestic violence support, lots of people that support both victims and offenders for domestic violence. So we are doing everything that we know possible to try and help that type of crime.
And again, this might be too early, but given that one of the previous interactions that this teen had with police was deemed a mental health related call, would EPS like to have maybe seen some support in terms of psychological support that maybe could have attended to this, or is this,
To be fair, I mean, other than unfortunately that also is way too common of occurrence, that unless we actually had a psychologist or a mental health team with every police response, it's just probably not practical. There was nothing that flagged this that would require any extra services, and even the call itself was a non-violent domestic dispute where a mother's having difficulty with a 16-year-old son. There was nothing to really indicate that this was a dangerous or high-threat violent response for our members.
Thank you.
Hi, Audrey Niver, French CBC again. Can you give us more details on the 911 call, and if there were, who called and what did they say to prompt the officers to come over?
I don't know if you have that.
The original call came from the mother complaining she was having difficulty with her son. That prompted the dispatched call to be put in, and our members responded to that. As was previously mentioned, there was nothing to indicate on the initial information that there was any violence or any weapons present, and that's how we triaged it and dispatched it.
And can you tell us, do you know if the son was barricading himself inside the apartment? Because I understand that the father was present inside.
The very brief information I appreciate is still pretty fluid, was that the father was in a separate room, did not see even the original dispute, didn't see the event with the officers, and so nothing to indicate any type of barricading or armed and barricaded person.
So we understand it's something that, happened very quickly.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We'll take a few more questions.
Couple more questions. Ritika Dubey with the Canadian Press. Do we know if the boy was living with his parents?
As far as we know, everybody that was mentioned resides there.
Okay. And do we know how many shots were fired?
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Any final questions?
Yes, sorry, you may have just spoken to this, but do you have any sense that either parent knew there was a firearm in the residence?
We don't. Go ahead.
There's no information to suggest that the parents were aware that there was a firearm present.
Yesterday, sorry, Karen Levitt, Toronto Star. Yesterday, I spoke with a resident in a nearby building who said that the woman came to him saying that her son was trying to kill her. I'm wondering if that information was relayed to either the dispatcher or police officers who responded.
Not that I know of.
Okay, thank you, everyone.